Thank you everybody for attending our RDX-N webinar with our co-founder Darin Moon and the Midwest team. So my name is Amy. I'm part of the Midwest team. I'm here alongside with my teammates with Zach Carlson and Tyler Jones. And then we've got Darin Moon here, who's going to be diving into the technology behind Redox and plant charge balance and RDX-N. So Darin, I don't know if you want to give a quick introduction as I shuffle some of these slides around here and get us screen sharing here.
Well, I really would like to start out by, excuse me, giving a shout out to yesterday. I was in a very cold part of the country, and I was able to give a presentation yesterday as well. And I'd just like to thank everyone yesterday who attended our meeting or was online as well, because it's really great to be able to get our message out. It's really fantastic. The guys at NutriDrip were fantastic hosts. Kurt and Tim were just awesome, and I just like to give a shout out to them for listening to me yesterday and allowing us to give a presentation. So let's just get started and dive right in, Amy. The thing that we want to bring forward at Redox Bionutrients is the entire concept, scientific concept of plant charge balance. This is critical in understanding what I call, or what I like to lay out, first of all, the next step or the next level. So our whole focus is, if you're in a NUE of 1-to-1 and you're getting whatever yield you can in your area of 150 or 250 bushel, that's fantastic. When we bring in plant charge balance, that is allowing us to A, be more efficient with our nutrients, but B, push our yields to the next level, whatever that might be. We have maxed out in agriculture the amount of NPK we can apply, synthetic NPK, traditional fertilizer, and maximize yield for ROI. We've maxed that out. We can't put on 400 units of nitrogen and get 400 bushel of corn. We've got to do additions to or understand plant physiology better so that nutritional balance becomes achievable, and then that plant can, again, achieve more yield per acre. So what we want to talk about today is achieving plant charge balance, okay? Cool. Let's go ahead and click through all these, get the three up there. Yeah, thank you, right there, right there, Amy. So the commonality here is the following, okay? First of all, we need to think about where this all starts. This starts with the basic biochemical reaction that is life itself, and that is photosynthesis. That provides food for the planet, okay? As the sunlight hits the plant leaf, our chain of reactions is triggered. And most people think about the larger reactions that happen, i.e., we produce a carbohydrate, and that then forms an amino acid, and then that forms proteins and leaves, et cetera, et cetera. That's the large part of biochemical reactions. What I want to draw everyone's attention to is the simplest and yet first and most important reaction that takes place when sunlight hits the leaf. And that is, it is the release of electrons. And those electrons are released into what is called an electron chain. And that is literally electrical energy that charges the plant. So when we talk about plant charge balance, it's not a made-up phrase. It's not some gimmick that we're trying to introduce to sell our fertilizer differently. It is based on the very most important reaction itself of photosynthesis, which is the release of electrons that cause a charge in the plant. So if we go there, first of all, and talk about plant charge balance or charge in the plant, it is real. It's a very real thing. And we're going to talk in a minute about it. It's actually a measurable thing. The commonality that has to everyone that's online right now is the interest is, okay, what does that have to do with my nutrition program? What does that have to do with the fertilizers I buy or how I apply fertilizer? If we look at this slide, we see the commonality, which is every nutrient on this slide in its plant available form carries a charge. So therefore, the correlation between I have a plant that is charged naturally in nature, okay, by sunlight energy, and then as a plant takes up nutrients, it takes up nutrients as a charged molecule as well. So we are in the electricity business. We are in the charge business. We just don't think of it that way. We think of it as pounds per acre. Okay, that's the way we can apply and understand rates and how to get product out. But in terms of how the plant sees it, in terms of agronomy, in terms of biochemical reactions, it is all about charge. Okay. All right, Jamie.
Oh. I was going to say, like, a lot of times when I talk to guys about this, I use phosphorus as an example, because if you've got heavy manure history, heavy chicken litter history, you might have high phosphorus levels in your field, right? Your high parts per million, but it's not available. We know intrinsically it's not plant available. And I think, to your point, Darren, like that's what you're discussing here, is that there's this whole component of electrical charge that is real time happening, right?
It's real time happening. And the very definition of plant available nutrient is a molecule that carries a charge. That's you can't define available plant nutrient without putting charge into that nutrient. Okay. I used the example yesterday. The air that we breathe is 78% nitrogen. That corn crop is bathed in an air that has 78% nitrogen. So why do we buy all this nitrogen fertilizer? Because the nitrogen in the air is not charged. The nitrogen fertilizer that you purchase is charged, and that's what the plant requires. Okay. Good. Okay, this is an important slide because it goes through a process that's really important in understanding how this relates to nutrient balance in plants. Okay, so we talked about plants carrying a charge. It's either positive or negative. But the most important thing to remember now, as the plant is concerned, is it always must balance itself out. Internally, it must have a charge of 50% negative and 50% positive. That is the way plants work. So as this plant is growing, as it is metabolizing, it is taking up water, as it is dealing with its environment and perhaps too much water, or we have a little bit of a salty situation in our soils, or we have excess heat, all of those things that go on around a plant, and it tries to take up nutrients in this environment, it does so in a manner of constantly maintaining what we call 50-50 homeostasis. That is 50-50 positive and negative charge. So the importance of that is this. If we take a step back and think now about the fertilizers we're applying, and they carry a charge, and the plant must balance itself. If we're applying fertilizer nutrients that create charge imbalance, the first thing the plant will do is turn off all other processes, first of all, to rebalance that 50-50 charge. That is incredibly important to understand in terms of nutrient movement and efficiency. Is as we look at soil tests, as we look at tissue tests, but more importantly, as we look at plants and how they grow, we must be able to understand that 50-50 balance has everything to do with how well our fertilizers programs are performing. Okay, so the goal would be then is to make sure that our nutrient programs are balanced, number one, and number two, they contain enough carbon in them to help with this 50-50 balance. That becomes important as we move along. But the other thing that's really important and critical, and why we really have something to talk about today, is 80% of the negative charge of a plant comes from nitrate nitrogen, synthetically applied nitrate nitrogen. That's okay, because nobody in their right mind would argue that not putting on nitrogen is a good thing. We know and we feed the world based on our ability to properly fertilize, and nitrate nitrogen, or nitrogen itself, synthetic nitrogen, is a large part of that. My argument going forward is the following. We've actually created an imbalance because nitrate nitrogen goes on the plant in a negative charge, and we create this growth, these leaves, etc., and we do not think about the counterbalance of that as to how we provide positive charge in that situation. Okay, people try to do it by putting on potassium and other positively charged nutrients. It's really hard to play that game of balance back and forth, because we have the soil, we have the environment, and all these things are going on to create balance. Nitrate nitrogen is the single greatest contributor to plant charge imbalance. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Amy.
Hey, Darin.
And
yeah, go ahead.
The farmer's perspective out of Nebraska here with Chad.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the misconceptions that just scares me a little bit, Darin, right? Because when I hear the way we've always done it, because that's the way we've done it, right? And we look at in the Midwest, when we're looking at corn, we are stumped at times because we feel like we're fully optimized on nitrogen. We feel like we've got this great plan, and we see this tip back at the end of the year, and we're like, how can we not finish? We need more nitrogen. Well, that's, we run out of gas. That's not the answer. And I think what you just talked about is the eye-opening experience for most of the people. Hopefully everybody that's on the line here listening is, because we are imbalanced, likely because of nitrate nitrogen, we are moving that energy to correcting some sort of the homeostasis that you talk about to get in balance, and moving that away from production. That's what scares me, right? And then how do we fix that? And I think that's what's pretty cool.
Well, I think that's really the point that I want to make sure is I am not negative on agriculture, on nitrogen or anything. What I'm suggesting is we've plateaued. And that's what you're saying, Chad, is, okay, I know I can get 200 bushel of corn. Okay, big deal. Okay, where are we going to get 250 without breaking the bank, or without, we know that just applying more nitrogen does not accomplish that. Okay, and that's your point. And that's, I want to really emphasize, this is not a zero nitrogen discussion. This is not a get rid of nitrogen discussion. This is a nitrogen optimization discussion, because it is the single greatest driving factor in plant charge imbalance. So backing up for just a minute, if we all accept, and we must, because it's a scientific fact, that plants must balance themselves 50% positive and 50% negative, and yet our single greatest input is nitrogen in the form of nitrate nitrogen, causing plant charge imbalance, how we rebalance that then is the point of this discussion and going forward. So thank you for that, Chad. So as we talk about this, one of the things that's really big with me that we are feverishly working on at Redox Bionutrients is there is a way to measure this. It is in millivolts. There are some very high-end, extremely expensive scientific instruments that can measure this. That's how we got to this knowledge, okay? We want to be able to take that to the field. So we are currently working with a company that produces instruments to come up with a handheld instrument that can actually measure this, okay? And I don't want to really spend a lot of time here other than to say this will be, in the near future, a measurable number for people to understand how their plant is doing. Because the point is this: scientific research has shown that at 400 millivolts at a pH of 7, so and I will use the range between 2 and 400 millivolts at a pH between 6.5 and 7.5, is the optimum general plant growing range of charge balance, okay? How we go about that then with our fertility program is we measure also the charge of our fertilizers, knowing if they carry a positive or a negative charge, and how that is going to then affect our plant. That is the whole program going forward in the future. Is we're going to be able to measure fertilizer programs in their balance, measure the plant, and be able to put a fertilizer on that is going to continue to promote plant charge balance. It's really all I want to spend on this slide. Just, I want people to understand, we're not going to just talk about this. We're not just throwing stuff out there. This will be a measurable number that you'll be able to see. Okay, go ahead,
Darin,
Andy.
to provide a little bit of clarity to that too, when you say not only will we be able to measure it, we have tools that are in protocol or in prototypes to be able to measure exactly what we talked about, to find out whether or not within that range.
Correct. That's really where we're going. Is we have to ground truth this stuff. Okay, so the problem with these scientific instruments that give us this number is you can't take them out of the lab. They're highly sensitive, and they're very expensive. That's great to give us the science of this. We want to make this the agronomic science, which means it has to be out in the field, okay? That means we have to take these instruments, they're put together, we go out and ground truth, and we do the tweaks and change the algorithms and all that, so it actually matches what the highly technical scientific instruments in the lab are able to do. We are in the middle of that right now. Check.
I love it. So not only talking about it, but measuring it too, right? I think there's a few
100%.
out there that say can't adjust what you can't measure. And at the end of the day, I know, as you're talking to folks on the line, they're going, aha, I know I'm not within balance. But a lot of times, Darin, too, we'll throw something at it, knowing that there maybe is a negative or positive charge. Everything has a charge, and we're trying to throw things at it, trying to get things within balance. And it's this moving. And
And
overwhelming for some.
to your point, Chad, that's what we want to remove is some of the guessing. Okay.
Yeah.
Agriculture science has a little bit of art to it because we don't have all the answers. And so we got to go with what we see sometimes, and sometimes it's not measured. We're trying to remove that from this discussion as much as possible, because in the industry of biostimulants, there's a lot of question marks out there about how they work, or do they work, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we're trying to squeeze and narrow that down to give a grower just as much confidence in what we're talking about here as they have in the tissue test or the nitrogen application that they have as well. So that's where we're headed. Okay, very quickly. When we at Redox Bionutrients, when we start to formulate a product, I want to share with everyone what our thought process is as we formulate that product, because we don't want to just put chemistry together. That's not agronomy. Agronomy has to take into account the living soil, the living plant, and how we affect that, or how we get our nutrient to that. So for us, just throwing chemistry out there and throwing large amounts of chemistry out there is no longer our goal. We want to be highly specific and highly focused on what we're doing, how we're doing it, where we're doing it. So there's 5 key things that we talk about. Number 1 is movement. The biological movement of our molecule when it either hits the leaf surface or it goes in the soil. It has to be able to move. If it can't move, then I have to put more out, because I'm hoping then that the root runs into it or is carried through the water source. If it's mobile and soluble as it hits the water and then is moved to the root surface, that's a good thing, and that reduces the amount of fertilizer that I have to apply. Number 1. Number 2 is absorption. Once that nutrient or that molecule that I've created gets to the root is a great filter. People often don't think about this, but the root is a filter, because not everything in the soil gets inside of the plant. That's because of the root membrane surface. It filters out what it doesn't want. So I have to put together in this molecule, I have to attach charge, or I have to attach other materials to it so that it will absorb through the root. Then I want everyone to think about, once it gets on the other side of the root, I've now entered another room with a whole different set of chemistry. I have my soil chemistry that my product filters through. Plant chemistry internally is completely different than soil chemistry. And I've got to be able to, again, formulate this molecule so it can handle both soil chemistry and plant chemistry. So when I get inside the plant, I have to move that product inside of the plant as well. So it doesn't do any good to get it into the root if it just sits there and can't move. I've got to move it from point of absorption to point of need. That might be a growing tip, that might be a corn kernel, that might be a tassel, wherever the point of need for the applied nutrient or the applied molecule, I have to be able to move it inside of the plant. Then once inside the plant, I now have to get it inside of the cell. That's another membrane that I have to pass through. Wow. And then it has to be able to be utilized. So those are the 5 steps that as we go through, we create some pretty cool material. But we've actually put stuff back on the shelf because it didn't fit into one of these 5 categories. Because again, one of the tenets of Redox Bionutrients is the high use efficiency of our material. You'll find our use rates are significantly lower. They are not lower because the plant doesn't need it. They're lower because we're able to move more molecules to the root inside of the plant than many other companies because of the way we put products together.
And Darin, I want to touch on 2 things that I think is very special about Redox and what you've created here. And not to pump your tires on this call, but I think number 1 is the name, right? Redox isn't just a cool name, but when you talk about the things within these categories and how you, with the Redox active substrates, right? That is not the name Redox. If you go out and look in the world of agronomy and chemistry, go look that up, guys. I challenge you to look at that. So Redox as a name, I'm not going to go into that, but check that out. That's number 1, pretty darn cool. And then you look at these 5 things. There's not a lot of companies that take these into account when they build a product. They may take 1 or 2, but like what you just said, before you put it on a shelf, you take these 5 different categories. And then, oh, by the way, Darin, ISO 9001, you make sure that what is in those jugs, first off, has these characteristics, and then what is in that jug is consistently in that jug. I think it's huge.
100% correct. And I'll just make the point to everyone. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm not knocking nitrogen, but why is it called UN32, or why is urea 4600? Urea is 4600 because that's the highest concentration of the urea molecule I can get on a dry fertilizer probe. Okay. There's no consideration in that of biomovement in the soil. There's no consideration of that of absorption to the plant. And again, it's a great, urea is a tenet of what we do. Okay. I'm just simply suggesting that the basic chemistry that we have come from, does not take every one of these into account. And so therefore, oftentimes in order to get a plant response, we have to put large amounts of material on just because it's not mobile or it's not able to be absorbed at the right rate. So this is, I just want to share with everyone, this is how we think. In our creation process, we lay these down, and our material, before it goes out the door, before it gets a check mark of that's a potential future material, has to check these 5 boxes. Okay, the next 2 slides are critical to biostimulants in general. So these next 2 slides could apply to anyone claiming to have a biostimulant. I want to focus on for Redox bionutrients. Been doing this for 30 years, and this conversation is the focal point and center of what we try to do. Okay, so this slide is the basic plant metabolic process. Sunlight energy, carbon dioxide, we get carbohydrates. Then we add a little nitrogen and we get amino acids, and then amino acids hook together and they get proteins, and we get roots and leaves and stalks and stems and fruit and all the wonderful things that create a plant. That's the 30,000-foot view, and that's what we have created today's basic nutritional program around, is understanding this basic process. Okay, the next slide is where it really gets interesting. Okay, Redox Bionutrients has focused for over almost 3 decades on the phenylpropanoid pathway, commonly called the secondary plant metabolic pathway. Okay, these are the compounds that really make the difference in how much is absorbed, or the utility of that material, or the movement of that material. Okay, there's terpenes, there's phenolic-based compounds, there's quinone-based compounds. These are all these small molecules that you don't see and often don't pay much attention to, for good reason, because they're in such small amounts, but their power, the influence on the plant, is extremely, extremely important. So for example, citric acid, everybody thinks about that and understands what that is. When a plant wants to solubilize an insoluble molecule in the soil, it produces its own citric acid, excretes it outside of the root into the soil to dissolve, for example, calcium phosphate. That is how plants work. That is done by the secondary metabolic pathway. And so the biostimulant material that we add to our products deals with mineral nutrition, our first slide, but then also the addition of biostimulants turns on this phenylpropanoid or secondary metabolic pathway to produce these secondary metabolites that improve nutrition, metabolism, etc. in plants. Incredibly important that this is understood. Okay.
And I said a point too, Darin, when I talk to guys about this slide too, I always emphasize that currently, as it stands right now with Redox, is that we don't have any living products in our jugs.
100% correct. 100% correct. Why is that? Let me just answer that very quickly. It is not that we are negative against that. It is that the consistency of those materials does not meet a standard that we want to meet. Okay. And I'm not knocking other products. I'm just simply saying, number one, not live, so I have a long shelf life with our material, 3-year shelf life with our products. Okay. Number two, the consistency of, because it's not live, it's not susceptible to varying soil conditions, varying environmental conditions. I'm talking about a biochemical reaction that deals with plant metabolism, and that's our focus. That is our focus. Okay. Very well said, Amy. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. As Chad mentioned earlier, something that we have taken in the last decade, we have taken to another level is what are called redox active substrates. That is an actual scientific technical name. I know our company name is Redox, but redox active substrates is actually a scientific name that anyone can go on the internet and look up and study. What is the importance of redox active substrates? Redox active substrates are biomolecules that deal with plant charge balance. They can either accept a charge if there's excess charge floating around in the plant, they can absorb that into the molecule and cancel out that charge. Or if the plant needs a positive or negative charge, they can give off an electron or a proton that will then help that plant in metabolism. So this is all part of the secondary metabolic pathway that we just discussed. What we have done at Redox is isolate separately molecules that are redox active substrates and incorporated them into our product chemistry. Therefore, I have a plant that's trying to produce these substrates. I am additionally adding these substrates in a biostimulant fashion, all focused on plant charge balance. That is the importance of redox active substrates, are plant charge balance, so that the fertilizer program that I have used for the last 50 years that I'm frustrated with because I feel like I've plateaued can now get to another level because I'm providing substrates that will deal with plant charge balance. Okay.
I think Darin, I don't want to discount that because nobody that I know of, and I've been around a few different products, is doing anything similar or really taking into account. I want to go back to that secondary pathway. You don't have to go back to the slide, but we're going to send some of these slides out for y'all too to be able to kind of reference. But if you go back, nobody talks about this, Darin, right? And I don't know if it is the producers that are looking to do more and get more out of the fields that they work with today. They have hit that plateau.
Yeah.
The things that we're talking about today, you don't need to know everything to get some benefit, but you do need to know, I think at a minimum, plant charge balance. You need to know that secondary pathway is what we're going to focus on with the products and services you'll see. You haven't seen a product yet that Darin's talked about. The core fundamental of the products that you'll see as Amy and Zach and Tyler get on, this is the core to what makes Redox unique. Take this in, digest it, bring one or two things that you take to your farm.
Chad, thank you for that, because that's really important to us. Is I do not want to be in the product selling only business. I want to be in the solution driven business and helping people understand the tenet of our technology and why we do what we do will make everybody better. It will rise the entire industry. Why? Because this is a scientific fact. This is not something I discovered or made up. It's something that I focused on because I saw the results of our labors and I wanted to understand why. And so as we made our molecule blends, okay, and we started to see results, it wasn't enough for me just to say, oh, that product works. We dove into why it is working. And the last 15 or 20 minutes of our discussion is the crux of the next step of agriculture to get more out of the nutrients that we utilize. So thank you for that, Chad, because this is really, really important. This is where I geek out, is in this stuff right here.
And thank goodness you do, because the last 30 years we've been working on perfecting this. Thankfully, we're bringing it to the Midwest. It's been perfected in specialty crops. And I know you maybe touched on that before I was on, Amy. But the last 30 years, you've worked on products and services that we know that work. How they work, you're starting to see behind the scenes. And now, oh, by the way, they work in corn, soybeans, other crops. And so again, I'm glad we're able to kind of put this in the Midwest here this
and
last
Chad,
year and this year.
Chad, to your point, the secondary metabolic pathway is common to every single plant. It's not unique to apples. It's not unique to cherries. It's not unique to citrus. Every plant has that pathway, okay? It puts out different metabolic compounds, but the stimulation or the utilization of that pathway in our major nutrient additions is critical to, again, the next step in yield and quality, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it's common across all plant species. Yes. Okay, so we have to deal with these redox active substrates. I think I've covered that pretty well in terms of I can either absorb or give off plant charge, and that helps balance the plant in this 50-50 balance that we must achieve. Okay, we must achieve that. As Chad mentioned, we are ISO certified. What does that mean? When you are dealing in products that are extracted from natural sources, it is very difficult to find consistency. Why? Because those sources can vary. If you don't ensure that the source that you start with is consistent, the product that you put out can in no way be consistent. We are very, very dedicated. We scrutinize the source of the material, and it has to meet a set of parameters. we probably reject 20% of the raw material that it shows up at our doorstep because it does not meet specific parameters for what we want to be able to produce. ISO 9001, I'm sure everybody understands it, is simply a third-party analysis of our systems and our processes that meets a standard of consistency. That is everything from raw material input to the manufacturing process to the very claims that we make, the ability to make those claims and ensure those claims. That is all part of ISO 9000. So we just throw this up here because you're not going to find very many companies in our space that are ISO certified.
Hey, Darin,
it's a full-time position. It's two full-time positions here at our company. We're that dedicated to it.
I know it seems geeky to talk about ISO 9000, but there's not. Again, we're around a lot of different products in the Midwest here. You don't see that stamp. You don't see that. And I'm gonna, just for the guys that are on the line here, just take 2 jugs of something, pour it out, whatever it is you're pouring out in the spray tanks this year, and just look at the colors. How many times have you had humic that you've poured, one's lighter, one's darker?
Right.
I mean, if you think of, like, Amy, I love your analogy. Darin, I think we kind of geek out about this one too. Like the candy jar, right? If you look at the candy jar and you talk about, or peanuts, you've got a jar of nuts and you look at the cashews that I always pick out. I think Darin, and I oversimplify it, but if you take the candy jar and you're picking out only the candies you want, or if you're taking a jar of nuts and you're only taking out the cashews, and maybe I want the almonds and I'm going to make this, that fractionation or how you build products is by getting rid of the trash, right? I don't want the Snickers, I don't want the Kit Kat, I don't want the peanuts, I want only the goodies. And that's, again, I think why you can do more with less of a physical product.
Chad, you're 100% correct. In fact, Amy, let's go on to our actual manufacturing processes. Let's get through this, okay? Let's get to, yes, here we go, okay? Because what Chad brings up is incredibly important, okay? Let's talk about humic acid, okay? We are a basic manufacturer of humic acid, okay? Not just as a humic acid, it is part of most of our material, most of our products, okay? We just simply take it to another level because current research and past research has shown that probably about 40% of Leonardite really isn't plant usable. It's garbage, okay? Why would I include that in a humic acid product, okay? I'm not speaking of other material. I'm just simply saying we ensure that 40%, number one, is not a part of our material, okay? Then number two, if you think about the humic acid molecule, it's a large molecule. It's a very large molecule. I want the components of that molecule. So humic acid is the breakdown material just prior to coal of an old organic layer going back millions of years. So we have these organic layers that started out as simple molecules, then it came into a plant, then those plants laid down and earth covered it, et cetera, et cetera. We go in, or people go in and extract that material called Leonardite. But that Leonardite is that humic acid molecule is a very large molecule. We break that molecule down into more individual components, into phenols and flavonoids and quinones. We break them down, put them in separate tanks as we want to, and then as we create a product or a need, we reassemble that back into A, just a humic acid product, or B, the type of addition that we want to put into, depending on the NPK material that I'm trying to utilize. We only put in those components that we want to have, okay? So it's very, very critical, which is why our use rates are so low, okay? Where most people are at gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons, we're at pints and quarts. Not because I'm trying to not put out material, I'm just not putting out any more than I actually need to get the response that I want to get in the plant, okay?
Darin, I'm glad you showed this slide, because this slide combined with that little ISO 9001 makes you completely unique in the marketplace, period. There's nobody that's fractionating or taking products down to the levels that you're doing it and the consistency that you're doing it as a company. And I think that, you hear about Fulvix, you hear about humics, I'm going to put them in at planning, great. They are not all created the same. And there are premium products in the marketplace. I challenge you to find anybody else in the marketplace that's doing this or something similar. Sure, somebody may fractionate a humic one time, but if you look at the right-hand side of the screen on the chelation, the fractionation, the complexing, the way it pulls out what we want, where we want it, And then, oh, by the way, we've got a third party that says, yeah, what's in that jug is in that jug. Nobody else does that.
And I'll just share the way you extract humic acid. There are multiple processes you can utilize, and depending on the extracting agent, several other steps, I get different output. Well, we go through and do that multiple times so I can get individual molecules. I want the individual molecules because I'm trying to affect a specific plant process or a specific soil process. That's why this is important, is the shotgun approach. That's what we're currently doing in agriculture. Let's put enough out and hope we get a result. I don't believe in that anymore. I believe that science has advanced far enough. We as a company have advanced far enough. I want this process. And then when that's done, I want this process. And then when that's done, here's how I influence nitrogen, or here's how I influence phosphorus. That's the point of this slide, is I am individually influencing the biochemical process in the soil or the plant that I want to deal with. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, next one, please.
And I would just add with that, Darin, I think that's the great part of like Redox doing this for 30 years, right? There's a proprietary component of like knowing what to select and when, right?
We have gone through our research budget, and the time we spend on research figuring this out is enormous, because I'm never satisfied, number one. And number two, thank you for that, Amy. We're not new to this. We are one of the older biostimulant companies in the country. We've been doing this for a long time successfully, and we're constantly learning. Okay, what we did 25 years ago is not what we do today, because we know more. We know more. What we're going to be doing 10 years from now is going to be better than what we're doing today. Okay, thank you. So this is more about fractionation. It just shows simply other molecules that we utilize. Amino acids, people are starting to become familiar with the utilization of amino acids in chelation of micronutrients, but also as biostimulants. We've been doing that for a really, really long time. Again, I don't want just any amino acid. I'm very critical about the source, the raw material source of the amino acid, number one. And number two, I'm very specific about the types of amino acids. There are, I believe, 70 plus amino acids. Well, not all of them give the response that I want. So if I put on 70 amino acids, I may get a response, great. But for me, I want a specific plant response, and putting on too much of anything can just simply plug up the system. So fractionation for us in terms of amino acids is very important in separating out the individual amino acids and then reassembling them in a ratio that I want. That's how we do it, okay? Our big technology, Amy, if you'll go back, I'm sorry, Amy, just go back real quick, okay? Our big technology and where our differentiation in the market takes place is our utilization of botanical extracts. Identifying plants and components of plants, they are very powerful molecules, extremely powerful molecules. The pharmaceutical industry is really, really focused on botanical extracts as well, because they are extremely powerful molecules in very, very low dosages, okay? And we have a whole stable of botanical extracts that do various biostimulant things in plants that, depending on the product, depending on the outcome, we will add that botanical extract to our amino acids, to our humic and fulvic acids, or none of it, in various ratios. And they are very powerful in what is driving our use rates. I emphasize use rates. I challenge anyone to use the same amount of material we use and get the same result. That's how good we are at what we do. Okay. All right. Next slide. Complexing. Everyone's familiar with complexing. I take an organic molecule, amino, fulvic, or humic acid. Okay. And I simply, because that molecule carries a charge, I can then take the fertilizer nutrient that I have, whether it's in terms of phosphorus, I can utilize an amino acid, a fulvic acid, or a humic acid to make that molecule so it's non-reactive. What do I mean by that? When I take phosphorus in the form of 1152O, 1034O, etc., and I put that phosphoric acid-based material on a soil, anything that phosphorus comes in contact with that carries a double positive charge, calcium, zinc, copper, iron, it immediately ties it up. It immediately becomes unavailable, Okay, that's why phosphorus use rates are so high. Is not because the plant needs that phosphorus. I have to flood the system to just get a little bit on so the plant will grow. We're taking that away. We are complexing that material, or we are chelating that material so that that phosphorus gets to the soil, moves in the soil to the plant, much more efficiency. Again, that's why our use rates are so low. Next slide. Yeah, same thing with chelation in terms of micronutrients. That micronutrient carries a charge, and that charge is very reactive. I don't want it to react with anything that will tie it up and make it unavailable. That is why we utilize amino acids. Amino acids can be utilized by the plant as well. We utilize them to do that 5-point slide that I talked about of moving, absorption, etc. Amino acids, all these things are very important in our additions.
The way I explain it, Darin, is it's good stuff wrapped in more good stuff.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Yes. It's as if you can eat the candy wrapper, right? Okay, very quickly. Technology that we are extremely excited about, that we've been working on for 10 plus years. I think now I got to quit saying 10 years because this is year 11. Okay. RDX-N is a botanical extract. It also contains humic and fulvic acids, but it is the power behind it are 3 different botanical extracts that focus specifically on nitrogen metabolism. The market is used to nitrogen stabilizers or used to live organisms that fix nitrogen in the soil. We do neither. This is a plant active molecule. This is a molecule that is improving nitrogen metabolism in plants. Why is that important? Because it is, I'll back up and make one statement first of all. Research out of the Midwest is proving that our nitrogen fertilizer programs are not very efficient. Okay, best case, only 1/3 of all synthetic nitrogen applied ever gets into the plant. That's research. That's research, Midwest research. Okay. As my plant is growing and it is taking up that nitrogen, it's one thing to take it up. To utilize it is a totally different thing. And that is what this material does, is rather than storing it in leaf tissue, and I get this vegetative plant that has a lot of leaves and doesn't have a lot of ears, or I have a beautiful apple tree that has a whole bunch of leaves and it's really big and there's no apples on it, I am metabolizing that nitrogen to go from nitrate nitrogen, which is what it is stored at in the leaf tissue, to ammoniacal nitrogen, which then can be combined with my carbohydrate to create amino acids, and then my plant continues to grow better. So the metabolism of that nitrogen is what we are doing better, okay? That's why we can optimize nitrogen up to 50%. It is not that the plant is using less nitrogen. The plant cannot grow better and use less. That doesn't make sense to anyone. It is metabolizing the available nitrogen better. So therefore, we are optimizing nitrogen so that other percentage of nitrogen is not wasted. So we go from a 30% nitrogen efficiency to an 80 or 90% nitrogen efficiency, which is why our optimization rates are so high. It is not lost on me what we are claiming. That's why this product is 10 years in development. Is for 3 years, I stared at the results in disbelief. For 3 years, I said, there is no freaking way we are doing this, okay? Because when you start talking about a corn grower that is used to putting on 250 units of nitrogen to get 250 bushels of corn, and we're going to tell him that he can do that with up to half rate, man, you've got to be able to stand on solid ground. We are on solid ground. We have all the research that you're going to go over, Amy. For 4 years, we've been doing commercial research in the Midwest. That is not greenhouse trials. That is not small plot trials. Those are large plot trials where we've gotten the results we've gotten. Okay, so that is why we're comfortable now to introduce this material into the marketplace. Is we've done our homework. It is shelf stable. It blends with fertilizer, and it is a plant active molecule. Those are 3 things that make us very unique in the marketplace.
Darin, I just want to stop you for 1 second. I know time we're in good shape on time, but I do want to actually hit on 2 things. One is some of the terminology that you're mentioning. There is an imitation, best form of flattery out there, right? But nobody's doing, or maybe even really talking about it in ways, but there are some of the language terms that are being utilized in the marketplace, specifically when you talk about nitrogen use efficiency, right? We want to be hyper efficient with nitrogen. that's not, I mean, it is a piece of it, but it's not really what we're talking about. So I love what you said there. And you said, a third of that nitrogen you're applying is getting used. We can optimize that third that's getting utilized up to 50 to 80%.
Correct.
To me, that is the key to this product as you think about it. And nobody else is doing that.
Here's what I want everyone to think about. It is not good enough just to absorb nitrogen and measure it in the leaf tissue. The difference we're making is we take it from what you're measuring in the leaf tissue and we are better metabolizing it so it actually makes something. So what is the response of a plant when you apply nitrogen? It creates storage organs, and those are vacuoles in the plant. Will create a vacuole, I have to grow a leaf. And the higher my nitrate nitrogen, the more leaves I have to grow. There is a level of nitrate nitrogen that we are trying to discover that is optimal. I don't believe we know that currently because of this product. I do not believe that we understand what optimal nitrate nitrogen is because we are metabolizing it so much better that I don't believe we need as much as we think we need in the plant. Okay, number one. Number two, everybody sees the downstream effects of excessive nitrate nitrogen. That comes in the form of disease, insects, lack of growth, lack of kernel field, etc. Everybody knows that's what happens, and yet we're not doing anything about it. That is what makes this unique, is because I can metabolize the nitrogen, you can still keep using your favorite nitrogen. Still keep using that favorite nitrogen. Let's metabolize it and understand that you don't have to over apply to get the result because we're better metabolizing or better utilizing what you have. The end result is obvious, okay? I'm filling the kernel better. I get higher test weight. I get all of those things because I do not have the incredibly high amounts of nitrate nitrogen in the plant.
Darin, I was talking to a farmer the other day, and it was kind of fun because we were kind of going back and forth. We might have I know I was drinking a Coke. He had a couple beers, I'm sure of it, because we had some fun conversations. But we were talking about just calories, and we were talking about diet and working out, and the average person, the 2,000 calorie diet. And we were talking about, like my body probably needs more calories, right? But if you take it that 180-pound man, if I have more calories, if I drink too many Cokes or too many adult beverages, too many calories leads to damage, right? Obesity,
correct.
And I think it was kind of a neat analogy that he kind of put back. It kind of makes sense. It has probably something to do with yield goal too, right? Like if you're looking at yield goal versus how much nitrogen. So it is a moving target, but how do you finish that crop is kind of what we were talking about.
Chad, to your point, I fully believe over the next 5 years, we're going to completely reinvent how people think about nitrogen. Completely reinvent it. Why? Because we think about application thereof. We do not think about metabolism. Mm-hmm. This product is about metabolism. We have the application down pat. Growers have invented ways to apply nitrogen that geniuses didn't think of. Growers are genius in this department. They can get product out. They can get it on the ground. They can do all of those things. The sticking point is we've plateaued. We have hit the wall of how much more nitrogen we can apply to get a response. It is not about how much we're applying. It's about how much we are metabolizing. That is the next step in agriculture. Is we figured out how much to apply. Now we have to metabolize it. And current products don't deal with that. They do not deal with metabolism. They simply deal with rate per acre. We are dealing with plant charge balance, and specifically through the active oxygen pathway, we are enhancing nitrogen metabolism.
I think this is a good segue, Darin. I love it. I'd like to bring in the rest of your team if that's
Great.
Okay. I mean,
yep.
Can you stay on?
I'm on the line. Too? Yep, I'm not going anywhere.
Because I'd really like to switch this over to kind of results, because I mean it's one thing to talk about, right? But then what is actionable? What have we seen? And so if I could bring in Zach and Amy and Tyler, I think he's on as well. I know Mr. Tyler, congratulations. I'm gonna call you out. He just had a new baby he didn't. His wife just had a baby a couple days ago. So
congratulations, Tyler.
Yeah. Darin, did you hear what he named his boy? I just got to tell you this.
Redox.
No, close. One of our products is named Knox, and he named his little boy Knox. So I don't know if he's getting NIL money for that or what, Darin. But so Darin, I'm going to switch it over to Amy here and Zach and Jones, and if you guys want to go ahead and start kind of jumping into some of the results for RDX-N.
All right, Carlson.
Yeah, I'll take it away. So thanks everybody for joining today. I am out of Lincoln, Nebraska, sales and product experience for the company. So very excited. As you can hear from Darin, the confidence and really the exposure that we're getting from RDX-N is very, very, I think it's resonating across the Midwest. And we're very excited to be able to answer questions about that. And obviously, one of the biggest questions that we get is, where has all the testing been done? So we want to bring to you some results on RDX-N that was done this past year, both in Nebraska and also Northwest Iowa. So a little bit of variability of ground. Obviously, Northwest Iowa is great growing country, very efficient on their nutrients and also their nitrogen, but we're going to focus specifically on nitrogen with RDX-N. So when we take a look at these redox results, we want to set out with an objective. And that objective, as Darin hit on, is up to 50% of in-season nitrogen we can optimize inside of that plant. So we wanted to evaluate RDX-N for its ability to maintain yield at 50% reduction of 32 UAN on corn. So we did it with a third-party CRO, Elite Research, out of Hamilton County, so right around that Aurora area, and really just wanted to take a stab at this, see how far we can push this, and see what those claims are, see if we can back that up. So grower standard at 100%, we were putting about 200 pounds out. That was at a planting pass with 80 pounds and also at a side dress pass of 120 pounds to the acre of nitrogen. We took that grower standard, cut it in half. So we're doing 100 pounds total through that entire season. We're taking about 1 quart, 1.5 quarts, or 2.5 quarts at that point to be able to utilize RDX-N to metabolize that nitrogen in that plant. Because one thing that I wanted to hit on very, very quickly is excess nitrate nitrogen in a leaf will actually oxidize. If you look at NO3, you look at that oxidation stress that happens from it. We've seen an increase in fungicides over the years from the increase of nitrogen that we're getting into these plants. So that's a degradation of the actual plant physiology inside of it and what it's trying to do to utilize energy to actually get a crop and grow yields, push those yields past it. So metabolism plus oxidation, those are two key terms that I want to hit on. So we can go to the results of this trial protocol in Nebraska.
Zach, if you'll just let me real quick, I just want to inject something. There is such a thing as not just reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species. So what you just said is critical because excess nitrate nitrogen leads to oxidation. No plant wants oxidation. No plant wants oxidation. That's why this material is so important. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, that's perfect. That's the color that I wanted. The better metabolism that we can have by nitrogen opens up all the other pathways for all the other nutrients that this plant wants to do, but it has to deal with that excess nitrogen that it's wanting to take up. It has to take up, but it has to store it and then it has to deal with it. That is an energy release that's happening. That energy needs to go to better processes in that plant instead of just dealing with that nitrogen. So going back to this, our objective was to cut 50% of the nitrogen out of the grower standard, use RDX-N, and maintain yield. It absolutely came out to be that. So this is not just a yield conversation. This is actually an economic conversation too, and a logistic conversation in the same sense. So if we're not having to fill as many times, use as much nitrogen into that soil, how much time that's going to take to be able to do that, we can then be more efficient both with our time and our nutrients. So we're very excited about kind of east central Nebraska, the Aurora area where this result came out of. And like I said, this specific protocol was set out to do a reduction or optimization, as we call it, for the actual metabolism of nitrogen.
So Zach, if you'll allow me just to interject, because this is really important. I have to continually reemphasize this because I don't want to get put in the crazy land, okay? The plant is not taking up less nitrogen. It can't. It is metabolizing it better. That's why we're optimizing. That's why we can do the reduction rate. This is not about reduction, but we have to talk about that. Why? Because we have to start from somewhere. So growers are used to 200 units of nitrogen. We have to start from somewhere. This is about optimization, but I assure everyone that plant is in the end getting better nitrogen in a better fashion than the 200 units. It's not about I'm cheating the plant. It's not about we're robbing from no, the plant doesn't need what it has. It's just storing it. We are optimizing that, and these results prove that. Okay.
You know, the simple term in my mind, you know, you always tell me, Zach, I'm a simple man, right? At the end of the day, I'm going to steal some of Amy's stuff because she talks about a multiplier effect. So that a third of that gets into the plant, we can the multiplier effect is basically comes into play where that plant can basically utilize more of that with this type of product. So I stole it from you. There's some NIL money there too, I think.
Hopefully she shares it around.
And I will add this, that when we talk about the technology behind RDX-N, we're specifically talking about in-season nitrogen. So important point to make. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There you go.
So going into a very exciting partner with us, Green Key Ag, actually up in Northwest Iowa, they set out into some very, very good soils that are highly manured. So they have a lot of organic matter. They have a lot of nutrients. They have a lot of just microbial activity. They support that. But we wanted to evaluate RDX-N rates, actually rates of the product, at a 0.55 NUE of synthetic nitrogen. So we're going to use that ratio right now to go into it. So Northwest Iowa, very good ground. Grower Standard was putting out about 135 pounds of N. That's both pre-plant liquid in AMS and also at planting with UAN 32. So the difference between this is they were using a humic 12% at a quart at that time. And I think we're all in agreement that carbon sources with a nitrogen pass are a fantastic addition to anything that you're doing. Hence why RDX-N has some humics and fulvics and that very potent biostimulant that's also in there. So we set out to utilize different rates of 8 ounces to the acre and also 16 ounces to the acre. And I think we came out to some really interesting results as we go onto this. So when we look at the results, we're seeing that 8 ounces to the acre on this showed a huge benefit even over applying more of the product. I think it goes down to what Darin's been talking about of how powerful we can become and how powerful plant extracts in the biostimulant category are and why we're utilizing it and why Darin in the past was seeing these results and really questioning and continue to question exactly the efficacy. So you got to have solid footing. You got to have a foundation to build off of. And in this specific situation, we utilized RDX-N in a very lean N program to actually metabolize what was already applied into that plant and boost those yields past the grower standard. So it shows in moderately eroded soils and even less eroded soils, if we can metabolize that nitrogen and actually get it into the plant before it's released, changed over and leached through that program, we can then have a higher influence at even lower rates. So these are 2 results that we're very excited about. And we are honing in exactly on specifically nitrogen programs to use rates of product. We want to make sure that it's both economical and it actually has an ROI to it. So we are very consultative when it comes to RDX-N based upon the specific program that growers are utilizing and not trying to just be that simple button just to sell product. We want to be exact on what we recommend on that front.
And I'll say to that point, Darin you mentioned like solution driven, business and results. And I think that's where we equip our partners with tools and resources. So one thing that I want to share with the group is that we'll be at Commodity Classic. So if guys are going out to Denver in the next week and a half, we're at booth 743. And then Darin himself will be at a What's New session that Sunday, the first day of Commodity Classic at 1 o'clock in the Mile High Ballroom. We'll be going more deeper into RDX-N technology and plant charge balance. So if you guys are available, come by the booth and come see us and come see Darin. Another tool in the toolbox that we provide our growers is a special type of soil report. We're not in the lab testing business, but we like to equip folks with more information to make better decisions. So this is an example of one of the things that we offer our partners, which is called a Cypher report. Basically, it's 2 different types of soil tests. We do a Malic 3, which is your chemical extraction, and then we do a very special type of soil soluble paste extraction, which is basically taking deionized water with your soil sample and pulling out the soluble nutrient ions that are available in that first 6 inches of micropore space. It's really what the plant sees when you're looking at solubility. So this is an example here of like what you would get if you're working with us. You can look at your calcium levels through your Malic. They may look fine. Your base saturation levels may look fine, but oh, look at this. I don't have any soluble calcium. It's actually extremely low. So we equip our partners with this type of information, again, to make better decisions in the field. And it's the same thing how we build out introductory programs. So we have a distributor network throughout the Midwest. We're building our dealer network right now. Folks can connect with us. We can hook you up with one of our local dealers, and we can do things like build an introductory pathway program, which is basically a sequential application program, small acres, dip your toe in, right? Whether it's 120 acres, 480 acres, with solutions that are specifically built around the challenges that we have in the Midwest. So as an example of the type of introductory programs that we can build out, we can, again, connect you with one of our local dealers, or we can work with you directly to get you started.
Hey, Aim, can I touch on something real quick before
Sure.
I love where you're at here too. And again, everything comes down to is how do I get a hold of a product? But when we look at what products are in the marketplace, how people buy today, there's very few people educating as much in the marketplace as I see Darin, you, and the team with Redox coming to the Midwest. I know it slows down the process of selling, but I love the fact as a company, the patience to be able to say, here's some of these, you guys don't believe us, go ahead and stick it out there, right? Like we'll put our name where our mouth where our name is. And I think that's a pretty unique approach too. And Darin, I know you'd rather have 5, 10, 15, 100, 500 people, growers, than 1, 2, 3, 4, the big guys. So I'd challenge you, if you haven't used or haven't thought about using this product, if you don't have a dealer close by, Amy, I know you do some of that direct to grower selling too, so we can drop ship it at the end of the day. But I think it is a unique approach. There's not a lot of people doing this. Again, I just want to highlight something from my company standpoint. Darin owns this company. It's not a private equity firm. It's not a startup. Darin's had this business the last 30. This is year 31, right? So they have the ability to be patient in this marketplace. But I also wanted to bring up one thing. You didn't talk about it, and I was hoping you'd bring it up, Zach, is the total acre stuff that you've done within that group. And I know you have some pretty good results. Just as a heads up, I mean, it finished in the top tier of all the products that Brian and Bryce and that team test. So I know if you want more from the total acre side of things, if you're a total acre member, make sure you reach out there and look at that as well. Go ahead, Aim.
Yeah, so I guess just to follow up, we will have this recording of this webinar available for folks that have registered to be able to watch again. We have some best practices in and around RDX-N, recommending a pint an acre at a cost at about $12 MSRP. So there's more nuance than that in regards to whether you guys are going to start to look to optimize your in-season nitrogen, but just know that we have tools and resources that we'll follow up with you guys to be able to share that out and have specific conversations about what the opportunities are on your field. And then there's a team of 3, right? So we've got myself, Tyler Jones, and Zach Carlson. Our information is also on the Redox Grows website as well under the Midwest page. So you can call us directly, you can send us an email, but definitely reach out. Like I said, we can connect you with the local dealer in the Midwest. And if there's not one there, we can work with you directly. And we continue to expand out our footprint and want to work with more great partners. So with that.
Can I get to some of these questions? I want you to be the Vanna White and read the questions. Darin, if you have a few more minutes, I'd love for you to kind of help stay on and answer some questions.
I'm all in.
All right, Aim. I know that there's a handful. I'm kind of putting these together. I know you have 3 or 4 already. You want to go ahead and pop a few questions out?
See, Zach might have to read them because
yeah. Let's take on some questions from the audience here. So, is there, Darin? I think you're best to answer this one. Is there an approach to an in-season nitrogen fertility program, I'm assuming, that helps balance forms of nitrogen available to the plant? Obviously, your technology can balance the plant and help it regulate the N it takes up. But is there a combination of urea-based, ammonium-based, or nitrate-based blends of fertilizer in season that can help that go even further?
That's a really great question. Urea-based is probably more direct to direct utilization by the plant. Here's where the issue becomes, okay? And different areas, these numbers will vary, but 25 years ago, we did some work with the University of Florida where we took soil columns and we put urea on a soil column and let it filter through the soil column. And every 24 hours, we would measure the amount of nitrogen in that soil column and the form of nitrogen. Within 48 hours, 80% of it was nitrate nitrogen. That is the issue that happens in most soils is you have nitrosomonas bacteria, and they act very quickly on that form of nitrogen, run it through their metabolism, and what they spit out is nitrate nitrogen. That's why 80% of the nitrogen a plant takes up is in the form of nitrate nitrogen. Number one, it's a storage molecule for the plant, but number two, that's the majority of what the soil produces, okay? So now that's going to vary by soil type, environment, temperature, et cetera, but that's one of the frustrations is as I run material through the soil, controlling that to the end in the form that I want becomes a lot more difficult, which is why now we focused on plant metabolism is, I don't care if it comes in the plant as nitrate nitrogen, if I can properly metabolize it, then away we go. Away we go. That's the best we know how. There may come a day when we can coat a molecule and keep it in the form that it is, or we can do many things. And that is great because then we're not contributing to plant imbalance. Right now, what we know is we are focused on metabolism of the nitrogen that the plant takes up. That's the focus of this material.
I love it. Darin, there's quite a few here. So for those that we're a little over, but I think we're going to go for the next 5 minutes, hit some questions. And then the questions that are in here, we're going to go ahead and follow up with answers on an email. That'll give you the recording. But one that was asked specifically is anhydrous ammonia. If I'm putting most of my anhydrous fall applied, how does RDX-N help? I can answer that.
Go ahead.
We're talking about in-season nitrogen, right?
Yes.
So not
we are working
applied.
on. So here's something that we believe. We believe in plant priming. What is that? That when I put this material on and it's taken up by the plant, it primes that nitrogen metabolism. It primes that nitrogen metabolism pathway. I firmly believe that's what we're going to find with anhydrous is that even though you put it on in the fall, we can still be efficient in the spring. Here's what I won't say. We have no research to indicate that. So we're not willing to talk about it. I believe that's where we're headed. We're doing that research this year, but the programs we are promoting right now, the way to use this product right now is years and years and years of proven research. Okay. That's where I will go with that. If someone wants to try it, welcome to work with them in trying that, but it's a trial. That's what it would be. Okay. Versus in-season nitrogen application.
And a variation of that too is foliar applied is a question with a fertilizer, and the answer is no, not foliar applied. No. I think that it's hot, right? Essentially, it's hot. It's a hot material that we might have some phytotoxicity issues on a foliar basis. Again, working on that formulation to try to work with that so we can apply foliar and perhaps even better stimulate nitrogen metabolism. Just not there yet. So the folks that are applying, and I'm kind of paraphrasing some questions here, but folks that are applying, let's say fall, looks like fall applied anhydrous, but then they're having maybe a double shot of nitrogen. Maybe there's something at planting as well as something later season. Would you recommend a split application with whatever they're going to do in furrow, and then I would call it late season or wide dropped, right? Or it's that's where working with the team is really important. Yes, I would recommend a split application. Okay. If I can continue to stimulate that nitrogen metabolic pathway, I'm better off. Now, we have done most of our research is a single application in the spring, but where we have done multiple applications, we seem to get a little bit better result. And I always feel that way. The more I can continue to stimulate that plant and keep pushing it, the better off I am. Okay. Again, paraphrasing this question, but if you don't split apply, better to do it earlier than later, right? 100%. Getting that start, getting that charge. I've got to turn that pathway on as quickly as possible. I've got to turn it on quickly. Yes. And just to paraphrase, again, we're establishing the number of kernels around. To this point, Chad, we've actually done germination and emergence trials with RDX-N, and it improves it by about 1%. You get better germination, not a lot, but that nitrogen metabolism, the sooner I start that process, the better. Yep. Aim, I'll let you get two more in here, and then Darin, we're going to let you off the hook, and then we'll answer these offline. Aim. I can't see the question, so Zach's. Oh, sorry. Zach. Let me just grab one here.
I can pull one here. We're looking at an approach of applying some N after tassel. How can RDX-N be used after tassel?
So that's a great question, but I want to emphasize whatever nitrogen you're utilizing and whatever program you're doing, I'm simply optimizing that use rate. That's what I'm doing. So if you're applying it after tassel, I'm going to optimize that nitrogen by 50%. It is a plant molecule, so I'm not dealing with protecting it in the soil. I'm not dealing with coatings and inhibitors. I'm not doing any of that. This molecule gets into the plant with the nitrogen, and it turns on this nitrogen metabolic pathway that increases the movement to that nitrogen from simple nitrogen to amino acids and proteins. So it'll do the same thing after tassel as it will at planting. It optimizes your nitrogen use rate.
Mixability, Darin. Is there anything that we can't use this product with? And I think the answer always is jar test first, but we haven't found anything that it will not mix with. Darin?
Yeah, that is correct. When people get familiar with our product portfolio, we do have a couple of products that are difficult to mix. They have to be applied in a special way. So that was a focus of ours, is knowing that growers in the Midwest they got to get things done in a hurry, and they're always behind, meaning weather, etc. We don't want to create any mix issues, and this material we've focused on that. We haven't found a material yet that we can't mix with. Additionally, exciting for us that I'll just throw out there for people to think about as well is we are working on, and we actually have some positive test results. I've got to tweak the formula just a little bit of coating dry fertilizer with this as well.
That'd be cool. I'm going to stop it there. I do want to two things. One is there's an adjuvant that you just came out with. I know somebody wants to talk about that, but farm gate for an adjuvant called Optimax. I just seen something on social media. High level working with. I'm gonna ask the question. Working with Optimax and RDX-N. What are you guys seeing? Do you like that combo?
Yeah. Again, why would I use a biosurfactant? Movement. So my water moves better and my molecule moves better. So yes, that's why that material exists. Is we focused on a material that the use rate is very low, but it's focused on nutrient movement. That's what the focus of that material is we've actually done studies of radioactive tagging molecules, fertilizer molecules, and we get a huge increase in absorption in plants.
I love it. Optimax, RDX-N, check it out. Amy, Zach, Tyler, Darin, thanks so much for the time. This is really cool. For the participants, thanks for sticking with us. I know you probably have a lot of questions. Every time, Darin, maybe I'll pump your tires here. Every time you're in front of a crowd, usually there's 10 or 12 people, and you spend another hour talking after you talk. So
I could do that all day long.
I know you love it.
This is my spot, man.
We're going to cut you an hour and 15 this time, but we are readily available. We're open book, and I think the team that you're going to see right here, call them. If they don't have the answer to the question, they'll get an answer to the question. If we didn't get to your question here, we'll follow that up with the video. It'll be here in the next, I think you said by next Wednesday, right? Out of the gate.
Yeah, we should have everything, the video and some resources on RDX-N, timing, rate, all that should be available to folks that register for the webinar. We'll share that out.
Thanks for sticking with us. It was fun to see y'all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.